What happens when two of country music's biggest personalities clash on live television? And a simple question about songwriting credits turns into an explosive confrontation that nobody saw coming. Today, we're diving into the shocking moment. When Tim McGraw walked off the Kelly Clarkson Show after Kelly pushed him on a topic that clearly struck a nerve. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this one is going to leave you speechless. The tension started building the moment Tim McGraw walked onto Kelly's stage that afternoon. You could see it in his body language, the way he adjusted his hat just a little too often, the forced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Kelly, ever the professional, welcomed him with her usual warmth. But there was something different in the air that day. Tim McGraw, everybody, Kelly announced as the audience erupted in applause. Thank you so much for being here. I have to say, your new album has been getting incredible reviews. Tim settled into the couch, his jaw set in a way that regular viewers of talk shows might recognize as defensive. Thanks, Kelly. It's been a labor of love. 3 years in the making. 3 years, wow. Kelly leaned forward slightly, her interviewer instincts kicking in. That's quite a long time for an album. Was there something specific that kept you going back to the drawing board? The question seemed innocent enough, but Tim's response was measured almost too careful. Well, you know how it is in this business. Sometimes you write a song, and it takes time to find its place. Sometimes the stories change as you're living them. Kelly nodded, but there was something in Tim's tone that made her pause. As someone who had been in the music industry for decades, she could sense when an artist was dancing around something. Speaking of stories changing, I have to ask about something that's been making waves on social media. There's been some discussion about the writing credits on your hit song from 5 years ago, Midnight Highway. Some fans have been pointing out similarities to a song that was posted online by an independent artist around the same time. The change in Tim's demeanor was immediate and unmistakable. His shoulders tensed and he shifted in his seat, his friendly smile vanishing entirely. I'm sorry, what exactly are you asking me? Kelly maintained her professional composure, but you could see she knew she had hit on something significant. I'm just wondering if you could address the rumors. Social media can be pretty unforgiving when it comes to questions about originality in music. Have you seen the comparisons people are making? Kelly, I think there might be some confusion here, Tim said, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there moments before. I've been writing songs for over 30 years. Every song I put my name on is my work, period. The audience was silent now, sensing the shift in energy between the host and her guest. Kelly, to her credit, didn't back down. She had built her reputation on being genuine and asking the questions that mattered, even when they made people uncomfortable. I understand that, Tim, and I respect your body of work immensely. But when fans start pointing out chord progressions, melody lines, and even some lyrical phrases that seem remarkably similar to this independent artist's work, don't you think it's worth addressing? The artist in question, Sarah Chen, has been trying to get people to listen to her version, which was uploaded to her personal website months before Midnight Highway was released. Tim's face flushed and he leaned back in his chair as if he'd been physically pushed. Are you seriously sitting here accusing me of stealing someone's song on national television? I'm not accusing you of anything, Tim. I'm asking you to respond to what people are saying. That's what we do here. We have conversations about things that matter to your fans and to the music community. What matters, Tim said, his voice rising slightly, is that I've never heard of this Sarah Chen person in my life. What matters is that I've sold millions of records and written hundreds of songs, and I don't need to steal material from some nobody with a website. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. As someone who had started from humble beginnings herself, Tim's dismissive comment about an independent artist clearly didn't sit well with her. Some nobody? Kelly repeated, her voice calm but carrying a new intensity. I'm Sarah Chen, a talented songwriter who's been working in Nashville for years. She may not have your level of success, but that doesn't make her work less valuable or less worthy of protection. Tim stood up abruptly, his microphone pack shifting as he moved. I think I see what this is really about, Kelly. For controversy, looking for drama to boost your ratings. Well, I'm not going to sit here and let you turn me into your villain of the week. The camera captured every moment as Kelly remained seated, her professionalism evident even as the situation spiraled. Tim, please sit down. This isn't about creating drama. This is about having an honest conversation about something that's already being talked about online." Honest conversation? Tim laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You ambush me on live television with accusations about song theft, and you call it honest. I came here to talk about my new album, to connect with fans, not to defend myself." Against some internet conspiracy theory, Kelly stood up now too, matching his energy but keeping her voice level. It's not an internet conspiracy when there are legitimate questions being raised, and calling it an ambush is unfair. These questions are out there, Tim. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. Questions from who? A bunch of keyboard warriors who have nothing better to do than tear down successful people. You're giving credibility to online trolls, Kelly, and that's beneath you. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Audience members were looking at each other uncertainly, unsure if this was part of the show or if they were witnessing something genuinely unexpected. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every heated exchange. Those aren't trolls, Tim. Some of those people raising questions are musicians, producers, people in the industry who understand music composition. When multiple people independently notice the same similarities, it becomes worth discussing. Tim shook his head, his frustration evident. "You know what, Kelly? I thought you were different. I thought you understood what it was like to be in this business, to work your way up, to earn your success. But you're just like all the rest, looking for the next scandal to keep people watching." Kelly's response was immediate and firm. "Don't you dare question my integrity or my understanding of this business. I've been where you are. I've faced criticism and doubt, and have never once taken credit for work that wasn't mine. The fact that you're getting this defensive instead of simply addressing the similarities tells me everything I need to know." The words hit Tim like a physical blow. His face went from flushed to pale in seconds, and for a moment he seemed to struggle for words. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but filled with barely controlled anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Kelly? You have no idea what you're accusing me of, and you have no right to sit there and judge me based on some internet gossip. I'm not judging you, Tim. I'm asking you to explain. There's a difference." Tim's hands were clenched at his sides now, his composure completely shattered. "Explain. I don't owe you or anyone else an explanation for my creative process. When I write a song, it comes from here." He tapped his chest aggressively, "from my experiences, my life, my heart. Not from some random person's demo that I've never even heard." Kelly remained standing, her arms crossed, refusing to be intimidated by his escalating anger. Then why not just say that from the beginning? Why not acknowledge that similarities can happen in music and move on? The way you're reacting makes it seem like there's more to this story, because I shouldn't have to defend myself against baseless accusations. Do you know how many songs get written every single day? Do you know how many chord progressions exist in country music? Of course, there are similarities. That doesn't mean anyone stole anything from anyone. The audience was completely silent now, some people holding their phones up to record what was clearly becoming an unprecedented moment in daytime television. Kelly's production team could be seen at the edges of the stage, unsure whether to intervene or let the drama continue to unfold. "You're absolutely right about that, Tim," Kelly said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Similarities happen all the time in music. But when I listened to both versions myself, we're not talking about similar chord progressions. We're talking about nearly identical melodies. The same key signature, the same tempo, and lyrics that tell essentially the same story about driving down a midnight highway after a breakup, thinking about what went wrong." Tim's face went white. "You listened to her version." "Of course, I listened to it. I don't ask questions on my show without doing my homework first. That's what professional journalists do, Tim. We research, we verify, we don't just throw around accusations." The admission that Kelly had actually compared the songs seemed to hit Tim harder than anything else that had been said. He started pacing back and forth behind the couch, running his hands through his hair. "This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. You set me up. You brought me on your show under false pretenses just so you could ambush me with this garbage." Kelly's patience was clearly wearing thin. "I brought you on my show to promote your album, Tim, but when I was doing my pre-interview research, these questions kept coming up. I would have been doing a disservice to my viewers and to the music community If I had ignored them completely? Your viewers? Your viewers don't care about some obscure songwriter they've never heard of. They care about entertainment, about feel-good stories, about celebrity gossip. This isn't journalism, Kelly. This is a witch hunt. Don't tell me what my viewers care about, Kelly shot back, her professional mask finally starting to slip. My viewers are smart, engaged people who care about authenticity in music. They care about fairness. They care about making sure that talented artists, regardless of how famous they are, get credit for their work. Tim stopped pacing and turned to face her directly. So now you're saying I'm not authentic? You're saying I'm not talented? After 30 years in this business, after all the awards, all the #1 hits, all the sold-out shows, you're going to sit there and question my authenticity. Your past success doesn't give you a free pass to ignore legitimate questions. About your current work, Tim, and getting angry and defensive doesn't make those questions go away. The cameras captured the moment when Tim's anger seemed to shift into something deeper, something more dangerous. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, but the intensity was unmistakable. You want to know about authenticity, Kelly? Let me tell you about authenticity. Authenticity is working your way up from playing honky-tonk bars in Louisiana. Authenticity is writing songs in the back of a tour bus at 3 in the morning because that's the only quiet time you can find. Authenticity is putting your heart and soul into every single note, every single word, every single performance, even when people like you are trying to tear you down. Kelly didn't flinch. And authenticity is also being honest about your sources of inspiration. It's giving credit where credit is due. It's not dismissing other artists as nobodies just because they haven't achieved your level of commercial success. I never said she was a nobody, Tim protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, you did. You said, and I quote, that you don't need to steal material from some nobody with a website. Those were your exact words, Tim, on national television, about a fellow songwriter who's been working just as hard as you have, just without the same opportunities. The reminder of his earlier comment seemed to deflate some of Tim's rage, replacing it with something that looked almost like shame. But instead of acknowledging the problematic nature of his words, he doubled down. Look, I misspoke. Okay, I was frustrated. But that doesn't change the fact that you're trying to destroy my reputation based on coincidences and internet rumors. Kelly shook her head slowly. I'm not trying to destroy anything, Tim. I'm trying to understand. Sarah Chen uploaded her song, Midnight Road, to her personal website and to several independent music platforms 8 months before Midnight Highway was released. She sent demos to multiple Nashville publishing houses, including the one that represents you. She can prove the timeline, Tim. She has timestamps, email receipts, everything. The color drained from Tim's face completely now. That doesn't prove anything. Publishing houses get thousands of demos. Nobody listens to all of them. Maybe not. But when a song remarkably similar to one of those demos ends up being recorded by one of the biggest stars represented by that same publishing house, it raises questions, legitimate questions that deserve legitimate answers. Tim was quiet for a long moment, his breathing heavy, his hands shaking slightly. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, more controlled, but somehow more dangerous. You know what I think, Kelly? I think you're jealous. I think you see someone who's had sustained success in this business, someone who's been able to reinvent themselves and stay relevant, and it eats at you because you had your moment, you had your time in the spotlight, but country music moved on without you. The studio went dead silent. Even the production crew stopped moving. Kelly's face went through a series of emotions, shock, hurt, and then something much harder, excuse me. Tim seemed to realize he had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, he pressed forward. You heard me. This whole thing isn't about some unknown songwriter. It's about you trying to stay relevant by creating controversy, by tearing down people who are still making music that matters. Kelly's voice was ice cold when she responded. My show is one of the highest-rated daytime programs on television. Tim, I interview A-list celebrities, Grammy winners, Oscar winners, best-selling authors, world leaders. I don't need to tear anyone down to stay relevant. But what I won't do is sit here and let you deflect from legitimate questions about your integrity by attacking my career. Integrity. Tim laughed bitterly. You want to talk about integrity? What's your integrity worth, Kelly? What did they pay you to assassinate my character on national television?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. Kelly stared at him for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely controlled fury. "Get out." "What?" "Get out of my studio. Get off my stage. This interview is over." Tim seemed genuinely shocked by her response. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious. You came onto my show, you dismissed a fellow artist as a nobody. You deflected from legitimate questions with personal attacks, and now you're accusing me of being paid to destroy you. You're done here, Tim. Security will escort you out." The audience began to murmur, some people gasping audibly. Tim looked around the studio as if seeing it for the first time, realizing that he had pushed things too far. Tim stood there for what felt like an eternity, his mouth opening and closing as if he couldn't quite process what had just happened. The reality of the situation seemed to be sinking in slowly, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been panic. "Kelly, wait, you don't understand what you're doing here," he said, his voice taking on a pleading quality that was completely different from the aggressive tone he had maintained throughout the confrontation. "This is going to ruin me. You're going to destroy my career over some conspiracy theory." Kelly remained standing behind her chair, her arms still crossed, her expression unyielding. "I'm not destroying anything, Tim. You did that yourself the moment you chose to attack me, instead of addressing the real issues, the moment you called a fellow songwriter a nobody, the moment you accused me of being paid to ambush you." The audience was captivated, many people now openly recording with their phones despite the usual restrictions. This was clearly a moment that would be replayed and analyzed for months to come. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I said those things about you. I was frustrated. I was caught off guard. Can we please just start over? Can we please just talk about my album like we were supposed to?" Kelly shook her head slowly. "It's too late for that, Tim. You showed your true character today. When pressed about something uncomfortable, instead of handling it with grace and professionalism, you lashed out. You attacked me. You dismissed another artist, and you made accusations about my integrity. That's not someone I want to give a platform to." Tim's desperation was becoming more apparent with each passing second. "Kelly, please, you know how this business works. You know how the media will spin this. They're going to make me look like a monster. They're going to say I stole that song regardless of whether it's true or not. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you came on my show unprepared to address questions that are already circulating," Kelly replied. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to attack my credibility instead of simply explaining your side of the story." The security team was now visible at the edge of the stage, waiting for Kelly's signal. Tim noticed them, and his panic seemed to intensify. "This is insane, Kelly. This is completely insane. You can't just kick me off your show because we disagreed about something. That's not how television works. That's not how professional relationships work." Kelly's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Professional relationships. Tim, you just spent the last 10 minutes questioning my motives, attacking my career, and accusing me of being paid to destroy you. In what world is that professional? I was defending myself. You were attacking me with unsubstantiated claims. I asked you questions, Tim. That's what interviewers do. The fact that you interpreted honest questions as attacks tells me everything I need to know about your guilt or innocence in this matter." Tim ran his hands through his hair again, his frustration and panic creating an almost manic energy. "You don't understand, Kelly. Sarah Chen, whoever she is, she's probably thrilled about this. She's probably watching right now, laughing about how she's managed to destroy my reputation with her lies." Kelly's expression hardened even further. "There you go again, Tim. Even now, even when you're supposedly apologizing, you're still attacking her. You're still calling her a liar without any evidence. You're still refusing to take responsibility for anything. Because I didn't do anything wrong. I wrote that song in my home studio. I can prove it. I have voice memos, rough recordings, everything." "Then why didn't you say that from the beginning? Why didn't you offer to provide that evidence instead of getting defensive and attacking everyone who asked questions?" Tim was quiet for a moment, and for the first time since the interview began, he seemed to be actually thinking about his responses instead of just reacting emotionally. "Because it shouldn't be necessary. Because after 30 years in this business, I shouldn't have to prove my innocence every time someone makes an accusation on the internet." Kelly's voice softened just slightly, but her resolve remained firm. Tim, nobody is questioning your 30 years in the business. Nobody is questioning your previous work or your talent. But this specific situation requires a specific response, and instead of providing that response, you chose to go on the attack. That's what makes this whole thing look suspicious. So what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to fix this? That's not my problem to solve. Tim, that's something you need to figure out with your team, with your publicists, with whoever represents you. But you're not going to do it on my stage, not after the way you've behaved today. Tim looked around, the studio one more time, seeming to take in the cameras, the audience, the security team, and Kelly's unwavering stance. When he spoke again, his voice was different, resigned, but also carrying a new edge of bitterness. Fine, Kelly, you win. You got your viral moment, you got your controversy. I hope it was worth it. I hope destroying someone's reputation was worth whatever boost this gives your ratings. Kelly shook her head. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about ratings or viral moments. This was about accountability. This was about giving you a chance to address something that was already being talked about. You could have handled this with grace. You could have explained your side. You could have shown respect for a fellow songwriter. Instead, you chose chaos. Tim reached down and unclipped his microphone pack, his movements sharp and angry. You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. I do choose chaos, because sometimes chaos is the only honest response to a dishonest situation. He threw the microphone pack down on the couch with more force than necessary, the sound echoing through the studio's speakers and creating a sharp feedback screech that made everyone wince. And just so we're clear, Tim continued, pointing directly at Kelly, when this all shakes out, when the truth comes to light, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you had a chance to handle this like a professional, and instead, you chose to make it personal. Kelly's final words to him were delivered with ice-cold precision. The only person who made this personal was you, Tim. The moment you attacked my integrity, the moment you called Sarah Chen a nobody, the moment you accused me of being paid to ambush you. You made it personal, and now you get to live with the consequences. Tim stared at her for one last, long moment, his jaw working as if he wanted to say something else. But instead, he turned and walked toward the edge of the stage, his steps heavy and deliberate. The security team moved to escort him, but he waved them off with a sharp gesture. I can find my own way out, he said loud enough for the entire studio to hear. I've been finding my own way for 30 years. As he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one final time. This isn't over, Kelly, not by a long shot. And with that, Tim McGraw walked off the Kelly Clarkson Show, leaving behind a stunned audience. A composed but clearly shaken host, and what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Kelly stood there for a moment after he left, the studio eerily quiet except for the whispered conversations starting up in the audience. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but you could hear the emotional toll the confrontation had taken on her. Well, that was certainly unexpected, she said, attempting to regain some semblance of normalcy. I think we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have some music to help us all reset. As the cameras cut to commercial, Kelly slumped slightly in her chair, the professional mask finally slipping to reveal the exhaustion and stress of what had just transpired. She had stood her ground, she had maintained her integrity, but there was no joy in victory, only the weight of what had just unfolded on live television. The confrontation between these two powerhouses had exposed something raw and ugly about fame, ego, and accountability in the music industry. It had raised questions about artistic integrity, professional responsibility, and the price of asking hard questions. Most importantly, it had shown what happens when someone used to getting their own way suddenly finds themselves held accountable for their actions. So what did you think about this explosive confrontation? Do you believe Tim's claims of innocence? Or did his defensive behavior and personal attacks make him look guilty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we'll be covering all the fallout from this incredible interview as the story continues to develop.